Hey guys, this is Tauna. Today we're going to be doing a guide to the Scions and Spellcraft Commander Precon. So this is a new series that I'm doing, so let me know if you guys enjoy it and stuff. So this Precon is coming with the Final Fantasy set, a couple weeks away now, and this set is obviously based around, Final Fantasy, the massive gaming franchise. So this is one of the set of 4 different Precons coming with it. They're designed to allow you to jump directly into a game of Commander, be able to play them, and be able to, enjoy it. So as I said, this is a new series, so let me know what you think of everything they cover and stuff. It's obviously evolving as we kind of go. So what we're going to cover, we're going to go through the themes of the deck, including major and any minor themes, which commander I think you should use, the strong cards from the deck, any combos or synergies you should keep in mind, how to play, including early, mid, and late game, how does the deck win, what to look for when you're mulliganing / opening in your opening hand, the deck's strengths and weaknesses, and then which direction to look at when you are looking at upgrading it. So let's go through the themes and commanders and cards first. So the quick summary of the deck is this deck is based around non-creature spells, specifically trying to aim towards casting ones that are mana value 3 or higher. That's going to trigger the commander, which is your Stola, and a bunch of other kind of stuff that you'll get decent value from casting stuff that is higher. There's also some token creatures, some control elements, and some control mostly in there to kind of keep you alive while managing to, build up your non-creature spells that you're casting. There's also including a whole bunch of the Scions, which are something to do with Final Fantasy 14. I don't know Final Fantasy very well. From what I know, they're like like a class of people who are kind of working together and stuff. Either way, it includes a bunch of those. So there's some legendary creatures and a lot of legendary creatures because of that. So the primary theme here is casting non-creature spells represented by either instants, sorceries, artifacts, or enchantments. There's going to be synergies between casting those and your creatures, mostly them just dealing damage out to things. There's some that create tokens. There's some that, draw you cards and stuff whenever you cast these non-creature spells. You're going to also, just create a bunch of different tokens with them, which is good too. There's a lot of different things that you're able to get just triggers off of casting these non-creature spells. So this is some examples. We've got non-creature spells here like Lethal Scheme up here. The thing that is interesting in this deck is that while you obviously want to aim to cast these and you want to aim towards ones that are mana value 3 or higher, realistically it doesn't count how much mana you actually spent on it. So Lethal Scheme, while you do have the convoke and you can tap creatures to be able to cast it, the mana value, whether you spend 1 mana on this or whether you spend 4 mana on it, is still going to be 4, so it will still trigger your commander if you use your Stola. You've got the Dancing Chakrams here, another this costs 4 to bring in, and it's going to create its own little token alongside it with the job select. And there's a few of these different job select cards in here that when they enter, they're going to create that 1/1 colorless hero token and then attaches that equipment onto it. We've got Hermes, Overseer of Elspeth here, which is one that creates a bird whenever you cast a non-creature spell. Propaganda is an example here of 1, a non-creature spell, and 2, just going to also be a way for you to be able to protect yourself, a little bit of control elements there. And Papalymo here creates damage, deals damage to opponents each time you cast a non-creature spell. And there's a couple different triggers like that, whether it's, your Stola or this little dude here. So as for your commanders, there's basically 2 different commanders that come with the existing Precon. Your Stola, I believe, is the better one. Each time you cast a non-creature spell, if it's mana value, again, not counting how much mana you actually spent, the mana value of the spell is 3 or greater, then you're going to deal damage to opponents and gain life. The very, very important thing about this, and what really sets her apart from a lot of different other commanders, specifically in Esper colors, which is white, blue, black, is that she deals damage to each opponent. Usually this kind of thing is based around life loss, and she would do life loss to opponents, but no, this time it's straight up damage, which means there is a bunch of extra things like, if you give her lifelink, it's going to trigger. If you give her, infect or something like that, it's all going to trigger based off of that damage, which is crazy great. The second part here also gives you extra card draw as long as a player has lost 4 or more life this turn. Keep in mind that can be yourself, you can deal damage to yourself or take damage yourself, and you will potentially get card draw for it. The other option here is Graha Tia Scion Reborn. So he has, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you can pay life, and then based off of that lives, you can, however much life the mana value is, then you can create a 1/1 colorless hero creature token, and then you buff it up with that many counters. So you kind of build up this army of different hero tokens that all have, +1/+1 counters on it. I do personally think that Y'shtola is the better commander. Graha is going to create you an army, but I think Y'shtola, just with that damage, just instantly just becomes a whole lot better. Synergizes very well with the Precon, even if I think that there is a lot of improvements that you can make to the Precon. I do think that she synergizes well with it. Graha, not quite as much, because you don't have as much life gain to kind of offset this, where you're going to be taking a lot of damage potentially. You don't need to pay that life, but you kind of want to actually get the trigger off your commander. So the secondary theme is here are hero tokens or token creatures. So there's a number of, as I said, job select artifacts that will come in, and they'll create a 1/1 creature token that then the equipment will attach to. Or as you saw with Graha creates one, there's ones that, we saw one before where it's when you cast a non-creature, create a bird. Boom, a whole bunch of token creatures that you're going to get out there. There's also control. Now, I put control here as a secondary theme. It kind of ties very well into the main theme. So when I look at upgrades later on, I will kind of just take into mind them both together, because I do think that upgrading more towards control with the non-creature spells as well works really well. They just mesh. They're both very, very great themes that mesh well together, but I do think that the control is a secondary theme. The last one here is Legendaries Matters. There is a huge amount of legendary creatures in this deck, and then there's some legendary matters, which means that, if you've got legendary creatures, do XYZ. So there's a couple different ones in there that care about legendary creatures, so it's a secondary theme that's in there, and there's a lot of different legendary creatures too. So looking at the token creatures, we've got stuff like Champions from Beyond. That really cares about you having a wide board, and tokens is the best way to do that. As I said about the job select stuff, when it comes in, create that 1/1 hero, put it onto it. Bastion of Remembrance, while it does create a token, that's not why I've got it in here. It's because it cares about creatures you control dying. The best way to do that is to have a whole bunch of 1/1 creatures that are just dying. And then you've got Hildebrand Mandeville over here that gives all your token creatures +1/+1. Great again. The control elements, you've got Propaganda and Authority of the Consoles, both great enchantments that control, whether it's discouraging people from hitting you because they have to pay mana for it, or just tapping your opponents, like your opponent's creatures enter tapped, and gives you life gain there too. Fandiel makes it so people have to either sacrifice non-token creatures, or they're going to take potentially a huge amount of damage too. And then you've got the Eye of Nidhogg over here that is a control element, because you can equip it, you can attach it, enchant an opponent's creature, and then that becomes goaded and stuff, and they give a big goaded dragon to someone. As for the legendary matter stuff, there's stuff like Thancred and Adbert here that both care about legendary creatures, whether it's giving them indestructible with Thancred, or Adbert giving them all +1/+1 counters, and potentially the Vigilance or Menace. And then you've also got stuff like LSA and Alphanord over here, who both have Partner, which means that when you cast one of them and they enter, then when they enter, you get to search the opposite one up, because obviously, they're twins. You get to have both of them. I don't know if they're twins or just brothers or what, siblings. Yeah, either way, you get to have both of them, which is great. And that kind of plays as well into that Legendary Matters kind of sub-theme. So as for the strong cards, the White Oricide is really great. I love it. It's a removal spell that also sticks around then to be a mana rock, which is good. The Reaper's Scythe, I think, is crazy great. So it is at the beginning of your end step, put a soul counter on this equipment for each player who lost life this turn. So if you deal damage to yourself plus 3 other people, that's going to get 4 soul counters on it each time it is your turn. Potentially that's going to become, on the turn it comes out, if you manage to do that, which is relatively easy, it's going to turn the creature that is equipped to it, into a 5/5 if it's the job select. And you can also equip it for 2, right? So it's very easy to move it across. The Astral Planisphere here is going to get you a huge amount of +1s onto whatever creature it's equipped to, whether it's the, hero token that it comes in with, or if you move it across. Papillamo here, dealing damage out is good. The life gain's good. But then you've also got the option here of making people sacrifice a creature, which I think is good because there's a tiny bit, not very much, recursion within the Precon. So definitely kind of, a good, we need to just remove some stuff card. We've got Authority of the Consuls, great card, as we talked about briefly. Snuff Out's really good because it does have the mana value of 4, which means it does, trigger Y'shtola, but it also allows you to just pay 4 life instead, which means, boom, you're going to draw a card there, and then secondly, you're going to be able to deal 2 damage to each opponent and then gain life back, which is good. Snuff Out's really, really great in this Precon. I've got Y'shtola here because she is one of the best cards in the deck. Even though I had her down as the commander, she's still really great, right? Like, there's so much you can do with her. I think she's great. Dancer's Chakrams here. Now, if you have this out, either whether it's on Y'shtola or a different creature, it's going to give lifelink to Y'shtola and buff her up as well. Really good. I actually love that. I think Dancer's Chakrams is just crazy great. So as for combos and synergies to watch, as I said, Y'shtola plus Dancer's Chakrams. Now she's got lifelink, which means that each time you cast a mana value 3 or greater, assuming you still have 3 opponents, you are going to then deal 2 damage to each of them, and then you're going to gain 2 plus 6 life. You're going to gain 8 life. Great. Really, really good. I think it's just amazing with that synergy there. Y'shtola also, as I said, works really well with any cards that are essentially cheating the mana cost. So stuff that is mana value, 3 or greater, but you can cast it for less than that, whether it's Convoke like Lethal Scheme has here, or whether it's like, Into the Story here that becomes cheaper as long as opponents have cards in their graveyard. I don't think these are the best of cards Into the Story, but it's still good in this deck because it allows you to, cheat out Y'shtola, cast it for cheaper, even though even with the 3 reduction, that's still sitting at 4. Snuff Out, as I said, you get to cast this for free because you're dealing 4 damage. You're taking 4 life, you're gaining a card, you're also dealing damage to each opponent. Y'shtola plus Graha works really well as well because of the fact Y'shtola is going to get life gain, and then Graha, you're paying that life there. You've got Papillamo plus Circle of Power. Circle of Power is really interesting because it's going to give your wizards lifelink, which means that now each time Papillamo is dealing damage, you're going to be gaining 4 life because you're dealing 1 damage to each opponent, plus you then got the additional life that you're gaining from it. So you're gaining, 1 damage, 1 damage, 1 damage, boom. Plus you're also getting this wizard out of here too. If you wanted the wizard, I don't know. I don't mind this card. I think it's pretty decent with a wizard based board. Now, if you guys are liking this content, again, make sure you let me know, as well as, subscribe, share the video around, everything like that. So into the how to play, your opening hand, I think you should aim for 3 to 4 lands, definitely. You also want an Archaeomancer's map or other kind of mana rocks, right? So you've got a couple talismans in here. Aim towards having those because you want to be able to get out stuff as fast as possible, and getting ramp in the Esper colors, so white, black, blue, which is what this deck is harder because you don't have that green to ramp up. So you need to have your mana rocks to ramp yourself. You also want 2 to 3 non-creatures that are 3 mana plus to just have them ready, as well as some creatures that synergize well with your non-creature spells. Ideally you want card draw, so having a look at a almost perfect hand or a really, really great hand here. So we've got 3 lands. We've got the Command Tower, we've got a Plains, and we've got Demolition Field. Demolition Field isn't amazing, but it's not too bad, especially because it does replace itself with a non-basic, with a basic land as well. But the better parts here, we've got the Archmage Emeritus here, which gives us card draw off of our non-creature spells that are off of our instants and sorceries, draw a card. We've also got Paplamo here to get him out to start dealing damage straight away. And then we've got Archaeomancers here just for our super duper ramp, which is great. I do love the fact that these decks include some targeted non-basic land removal, because nowadays there are just so many really strong non-basic lands. Like if you just look like a command tower, destroying someone's command tower with the demolition field, yeah, I think you get a reward for that, because then that person's just going to really, really hate you. So as for our early game, we want to start building our engine up, right? We want to get our stuff that's going to trigger off our non-creature spells. We want to start getting that stuff rolling as fast as possible. We also want some control stuff with like propaganda or authority of consuls to discourage attackers or slow opponents down, because we don't have that ramp to kind of ramp up into our stuff as fast as possible. We want to then say, hey, you're not going to be able to attack me because you've got propaganda. Are you really going to pay 2 extra mana just to swing your 1/1 at me? No, I don't think so. You also can selectively remove your opponent's big threats if they cast their commander and their deck's based around their commander. Use some removal on it. You've got you have 1 counter spell, or technically 2 counter spells in the deck. You just want to kind of have them ready potentially as well, but I do think that you're better off waiting until you've built up your engine, have your counterspells ready to stop people shutting that down, because this deck really wants to have their engine going, and then boom, cast non-creature not after non-creature, and just get a whole bunch of value out straight away. And you want to have 3 to 4 cards ready to take advantage of your Y'shtola's ability as soon as possible. So as soon as you bring her out, the aim is to cast roughly 2 of these non-creature spells with mana value 3 or greater on each turn. Like preferably, they're most likely going to be 2 on your turn. If you can cast 2 on your turn and then 2 on someone else's turn, more power to you. You probably have an insane amount of mana and you're probably going to win the game very easily from that, but at least cast 2 on your turn. Continue building up your engine, stuff like, Reaper Slice is great. I have Nidhogg, use that to selectively kind of remove / taunt someone's opponent, someone else's creature, make their goaded, make it so they have to attack, etc. And then save your counter, so like Sublime Epiphany, and then there is Hypnotic Sprite, I believe, in the Precon as well, for any removal that's aimed your way towards Y'shtola. You really want to protect her, or any, board wipes that are happening as well, especially if they're going to remove artifacts or enchantments. You really want to make sure you stop those. So how do we assemble a win? The aim here is to just burn people out, or basically deal a whole bunch of non-combat based damage with Y'shtola triggering, with Paplamo, with Fandiel, those kinds of triggers going off. While you will have some creatures out that you're likely to be able to swing in with, namely like tokens and stuff, most of your damage is going to be hopefully not from combat. Getting your commander's lifelink is huge, because again, if she's got lifelink, you're going to gain, 8 life for each time you cast a non-creature spell, which is crazy. That's bonkers. Now, one thing to keep in mind as well is that Y'shtola does have vigilance. She does have vigilance. So if you do manage to, get her going, and then you equip the Dancer's Chakrams or the Reaper Scythe onto her, she can really threaten some damage, because she will get huge and she can swing in without needing to be tapped. So she can then, defend as well, right? Like she's actually really bonkers in regards to combat. She's got a big butt. She's a 2/4. So decent card to just protect you as well. So how does it stack up? You can build a pretty decent board of creatures that will, trigger off of your non-creature spells, as well as just by casting your non-creature spells, you can get a whole bunch of these creatures out. Y'shtola, again, I think is crazy strong. I think that she's the best part of this Precon and can easily pop off. And with some upgrades to the Precon, this Precon is really going to be bonkers. Some nice synergies to go with the non-creature spells in here too. And there's some ways to interact with the graveyard as well, just in case your creatures do get removed. I did put there's only 1 counterspell on here. There is only technically 1 counterspell. However, there is a Hypnotic Sprite that has an adventure that is a counterspell as well. So technically kind of, 1 or 2. So there's not that much control off the bat in regards to that. And a board wipe's really going to shut you down if it does exile, especially your artifacts, and, just remove all of those enchantments that you start building up, because you really need your engine going to kind of, start dealing a whole bunch of damage, getting a whole bunch of triggers off boom, I cast a non-creature spell. This triggers, this triggers, this triggers. I'm going to, deal 5 damage to each of you. I'm going to, gain 10 life, etc. So when you are looking at upgrading, just the base precon, if we're aiming towards what the precon is aiming towards, which is going to be, as I said, that non-creature spells and that burning out of people, I think is the way to go for the upgrading. You want ways to protect your board and remove threats, specifically things that are 3 mana value or greater. Anything like Unwind is really good because it is going to cost you 3, sure, but then untaps 3 lands. So technically this is not going to cost you anything because you can untap your lands. Right? I think that Unwind is really great in this precon. You just want to aim towards things that are 3 mana value or greater, and potentially things that can reduce the cost of things as well. You want more ways to take advantage of your Stolar's damage. So like Phoresis here, which gives her Infect, which means that when she deals damage to opponents, she's not going to actually deal damage. She's going to put poison counters on them. Therefore, you only need to deal put 10 poison counters on each person. Which means that that's 5 triggers off of her, which is really easy to do. Ways to cheat the mana cost of cards as well. So stuff like Bolas' Citadel is amazing. Saruman of Many Colors is really good here because now you're going to mill opponents and then you get to cast either an enchantment, instant, or sorcery for free from their graveyard. From the cards that were milled, which is good, right? Really, really great. So as I said, the things to cut here are going to be your creatures that aren't synergistic. There is a lot of weird themes with the creatures, whether it's, that Legends Matter stuff. I think cut that. You've got the tokens that they kind of double down on in certain areas. I wouldn't add as many token creatures as they've got. Just kind of, aim more towards what the deck kind of said it was going to be, which is non-creature spells. If you're looking more towards the Legends Matter stuff, though, there's a bunch of different cool stuff you can add in here. Elena's a new one here, but stuff like that, there's just more legendary creatures. Just get all those legendaries in there that are really great. There's a bunch of different Legends Matter cards, so like Flowering the White Tree that buffs up your legendary creatures. And there's also a bunch of legendary non-creatures that are 3 mana value or greater. Stuff like Hero's Podium. That is a legendary non-creature, but it is also, mana value 3 or greater, so it's going to still trigger your Stolar. And the stuff you're cutting is obviously your non-creatures, non-legendaries, and then any of the spell slinger based stuff. So stuff that's like, when you cast an instant or sorcery, do this. We're not aiming towards that. We're just aiming towards like legendary and legendary creatures mostly here. As for if you want to go more in the token creatures, there is a bunch of different ways you can do this as well. Ways to create token creatures, which like the Thunderhawk Gunship here. When it enters, create 2 token creatures, but it's also a mana value 3 or greater. Ways to sacrifice those creatures and take advantage of them dying as well. Any token synergies, and just you also need some more ways to protect your board. And the stuff you're cutting here is mostly your legendaries matters and your spell slinger based stuff there. So in conclusion, the deck is more complicated, I think, than typical precons, while still being, new player friendly. I think the deck greatly benefits from upgrades as it is a little bit scattered. There's like, a bunch of different sub themes that compete more with the main theme, as opposed to like the Counter Blitz precon, which purely has like, sub themes, but those sub themes work really well with the main theme. I think the sub themes here make it a little bit muddled in regards to what the main theme is. Not necessarily making it a weaker deck, just a bit muddled. You're going to be likely playing a very slow game with it, trying to burn people out with your commander and stuff, and getting those triggers off the non-creature spells, and ramping up with mana rocks and stuff is going to be very, very important there. So let me know what you guys think. I hope you guys had a wonderful day, and goodbye.